Today, for your viewing pleasure, we're going to feed our normals mouldy food.
Viewing pleasure, but not necessarily eating pleasure.
Lift the cloche.
I'm happy with a cloud of apprehension. I'm sunny with 30% chance of thunderstorms. This is what I was thinking. It was going to be a lot of mouldy cheese. But actually, I hadn't considered deli meats.
The two cheeses at the front are both goat's cheeses.
Oh, okay.
And then you've got some Roquefort at the back, which is sheep's cheese. And then you're right, a French saucisson. Now the doorstone, which is the long cylindrical one stood on its end, is rolled in ash, which gives it what might look like sort of a mouldy edge, but that's actually a deliberate ash coating. However, if you get really close, there's plenty of mould there too.
Is that a preservation thing, rolling it in ash?
For preservation, for presentation, and for flavour. And then the Cinedon Hill doesn't start out with those blue moulds, but as cheese is stored, it catches spores. Roquefort, as you might expect, you can buy that, it's AOP, so protected designation of origin, and then a saucisson with a white powdery mould on the outside. Dig in. Beautiful and creamy
lovely.
inside.
It looks lovely inside.
Now, bearing in mind the moulds on cheeses can change the texture of the cheese within, but it's also adding funky flavours to the rinds and the outside.
So how do we know that this mould is
Safe.
Yeah, good mould?
I asked the cheesemonger. I said, is that supposed to be like that? She said, well, it's not designed like that, but naturally some of our cheeses as we keep them gain moulds, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're all, you know, unique.
So we are a cheesemonger's guinea pig right now. Yeah, it'll be fine.
Generally speaking, white and blue moulds are fine on cheese. If it goes a warm colour, like an orange or a pink,
That is a very, very pleasant, salty, creamy goat's cheese.
That is a beautiful, beautiful goat's cheese. Incredibly creamy, drying. Oh, it's delicious.
It's got a funk.
Yeah.
It has a funk not just in smell. I actually like that.
Really like
Didn't
that.
expect to say that.
And I think the reputation of mouldy food is generally bad because the word feels quite negative. And yet, whilst a lot of cheeses don't need moulds, mould can enhance a cheese, i.e. make it better.
I actually completely agree that the mould is adding a flavour profile that's subtle, but the fact that it's there makes it taste nicer.
But
genuinely.
are we tasting the mould itself, or is the mould reaching into the cheese to add to the flavour? Like, what's
Has the moulding process affected
exactly
the flavour of the cheese?
So the moulds break down proteins and fats in cheeses, and they give off other elements. So aldehydes and ketones, which give you like nutty, fruity, funky flavours. Ammonia and sulfur, which are giving those definitely the funky options and also the tang. But some moulds then ferment and give you kind of floral, sweet notes, and they can all adapt and change the texture of the cheese within.
Let's try the pyramid.
Oh, interesting. So the texture is all on the outside.
Okay.
But
Because
again,
of the moulds they're shaped in, they take on that textured effect.
So mate, there is double mould.
What do you mean
There's double mould. There's the mould that is grown, and there's the mould in which the shape of the cheese was put.
Oh, it's been moulded.
It's double moulded.
Broadly speaking here, we are talking about the penicillium moulds, of which there are lots of different types. So Penicillium roqueforti, which you'll find in blue cheeses like Roquefort, give a real tang.
Dear, that smells mouldy.
And tends to be blue, whereas Penicillium camemberti, found in the likes of camembert, give you a white mould.
So this is a white mould.
Whites and blues you've got there.
Whites and blues. Oh dear.
Some would say an acquired taste, but actually a delicious, intense depth of flavour.
Oh, the mould is bold.
Oh, we're into psycho-sexy territory, aren't we?
Wow. You're not eating any of the mould ebbers. No, you got a tinsy bit. We went full green.
We went proper mouldy.
Oh yeah.
I'd say mould flavour first,
Yes.
personally. But then I'm a...
And then grassy and almost straw-like.
Yeah.
Very milky. You're getting a lot of the dairy, but the sweetness of the dairy. Also that tang and nutty funk of blue cheese.
You feel like, wow, that's going to be so mouldy. It's about to kick in. And it doesn't. Actually, the creaminess comes through. And then it ends up almost with a finish similar to the first one.
I'm getting a lot more of that in my nose, I think.
That's
as
what I
well.
mean. I think almost a pasture. I'm literally tasting almost grass and meadow in the dairy of that.
Right.
Try the Roquefort. Penicillium roqueforti. I mean, it's been used to make Roquefort cheese since about the 15th century.
Wow.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
I can't do it.
No?
Oh, no, I can't do that. It's just not for me.
Just not for him.
It's really salty, isn't it?
Really salty, very tangy, and you get almost that lactic tang that comes out of the moulds that they inject into the cheese. Mike, maybe just cleanse your palate with a bit of saucisson.
Yeah, please.
Now, this is a white mould, and essentially it grows on the outside of the casing, natural casing of the cured meat, and therefore, like the other cheeses, protects what's inside because it keeps bad bacteria away.
So, I am very familiar with saucisson and other such salami
Derivatives.
styles of meat. I'd never considered that was mould on the outside.
And I think that hopefully is the journey we're going to go on today, because a lot of the time, mould and mouldy get bad rap, but actually necessary in so many of the foods we already love. If you think back to when Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, pretty much by mistake, it was because the penicillin mould had basically killed all the bacteria around it, and that's what he noticed was the bad bacteria was staying well clear and had been killed by the penicillin which was growing in the tray. That's what it's essentially doing. Different strain of penicillium, but it's keeping the bad bacteria at bay and therefore helping to preserve and protect the curing of the meat inside.
So is there any flavour benefit to this?
There will be some flavour as well. A mould is a type of fungi, so not all fungi are moulds, but moulds are a type of fungi, which we know to be mushroom and umami, but they also have a role in the way they break down fats and proteins, which is why a lot of these cheeses, whether it's a white bloom on like a camembert or a blue vein, sometimes injected, sometimes they just naturally form, it's because these moulds exist in the dark, damp places where these cheeses are aged, caves traditionally.
Cushion's house.
So in summary, lots of different penicilliums from Roqueforti, the blue, to Camemberti, the white, or Naujavense, which is the Penicillium naujavense you find often in sausage or cured meat production, but they all sit under the penicillium bracket.
What's interesting is, knowing that I was going to be in this video, I presumed that this would form 2 or 3 of the conversations that we were going to have. The fact that it's all come out in
Now.
one.
I can only think of one other mouldy example that we might be visiting, but I'm now excited because I feel like we've got cheese out of the way.
4 different cloche lifts, and we're looking at 4 different strains of mould. We've done penicillium. Let's move on to round 2. When you're ready for an incredibly mouldy plate of food, lift the cloche.
So what have we got here?
Salmon.
Salmon, but is it cured?
What's underneath?
It's like rice.
Have a taste. Tell me what you're getting.
Oh, there's some pickle here as well.
There's some perilla pickled daikon.
Oh,
There's some katsuobushi, which you can see on top. Miso mayo dressed sticky rice with a little togarashi. And then shio, koji and sake marinated salmon.
that is phenomenal.
Koji.
Koji, yes,
said the
because of
word.
sake.
Yeah.
Koji is a mould. It's used to ferment rice grains.
And or legumes. So koji or aspergillus mould. So we've done penicillium, we're now doing aspergillus moulds. Again, on the whole, they outcompete harmful moulds, yeast and bacteria so that you end up with a good result. And it's necessary to use this mould on legumes like soybeans or rice to make miso, sake and katsuobushi.
Oh, yes, Eppers. This is about to hit my spot. Is this a daiginjo or a junmai?
I don't actually know.
You got sake in. Kampai.
Kampai.
I'd always considered miso being a fermentation process, not a mould.
So it kind of needs a bit of both. So koji refers to rice, barley or beans that have been inoculated with a mould, a very specific mould, and that helps to break down everything in it. The mould give off enzymes, and they break down all the component parts. So proteins into amino acids, which is your umami. They break starches down into sugar, which is what makes it sweet. So that's why miso, soybeans that have had the inoculation and then break down, you get the umami and the sweetness from white miso. And they also break down fats to give you a really lovely sort of mouthfeel.
Where does the toastiness that you get from the miso flavour come from? Is that a mould thing, or is that the sugars breaking down, or is it part of the mould?
It can depend on what's happened to the beans and their process, and whether the beans have already been cooked or toasted or processed.
So how come with this
amazing.
mould it's not so visible?
Is it because the moulding process starts at the beginning and leads to fermentation, not grows and then stays?
Exactly that.
Me.
Going back to what moulds are, they're a type of fungus that grow in thread-like structures, and therefore they can spread and become that familiar sort of furry look, but also under the fungi umbrella is yeast, which are just single-cell organisms.
Izzy's doing a great job with the next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
So that mould is the one that's used on katsuobushi. So essentially the fish is prepared, cooked, smoked, deboned, dried predominantly, and then the moulds go on. So the moulds then continue to dehydrate the surface and produce enzymes, and the enzymes react and break down the proteins to give you that umami amino acid richness.
Isn't it amazing that we've found a way to control moulds in a way to make them like food safe and predictable as well, I think, in terms of how they're going to grow and react and what they're going to do to the foods.
Well, isn't it mad that there's a specific type of mould applied at the beginning of the miso, and then a different specific mould applied to the katsuobushi? And what happens if you get that wrong?
Yeah.
Who got it wrong? Because
They're not here
They're not here anymore.
Well, as a living organism, it might not survive. It needs the right things to live on.
Live and thrive, yeah.
Thrive, in the same way that by doing so, it keeps the harmful bacteria at bay.
We take everything for granted.
Yeah.
Like these lights that are on, I understand that there is electricity going through them and therefore that's... But how does that actually work? We're sitting here now, but they are sitting in every place around the world watching this. They can hear us. They can say, how does that work?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's best not to think too deep, too far, but that's kind of what this episode is trying to do.
Making me have an existential crisis.
Yeah, Wi-Fi.
We're here to just... We're not eating that.
If we're just going to list things that confuse us, then this video is going to be about 8 years long.
Penicillium done, aspergillus done. Should we move on to round 3?
Yes, please.
The cheese and charcuterie board might have been obvious. The second one was very much Mike's sweet spot. This one's mine.
Wine? Mouldy grapes? Dessert wine, obviously.
We've had this.
Yeah, but I wasn't here. I was on holiday, so I'm doing it again.
This is called...
Mouldy grape skin.
Yeah, and it's the Australian rotten grapes.
They do it in Australia as they do it in many parts of the world. Probably most famously done...
Noble rot!
Noble rot, otherwise known as botrytis. Looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we looked at that and went, why would you ever look at that and think, that would be nice?
Yeah, I'm going to pop that in my mouth.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few processes that happen before you do, but it is essential to making sweet botrytized dessert wines. Most famous originally from Sauterne, which is what this is, a Sauterne in Bordeaux, France, but also now commonplace around the world in this method, deliberately letting the grapes catch the fungus, the mold botrytis, and ending up looking like that.
It's so sweet. I'm getting notes of melon.
Peach.
So it is lusciously sweet, and the reason is the mold, the fungus, the noble rot, basically covers the outside of the grape, makes microscopic little holes in the grape that don't mean the grape overall suffers, but it dehydrates. So you're taking all the water content out of the grape and leaving all the natural sugars. You're almost left with raisins in a way, except that they also have, because of the noble rot, the botrytis, so many other delicious flavors added in, as we saw with the cheeses. So things like honey,
Oh, yeah.
toasted nuts, maybe some saffron, as well as all the fruits you might accept.
What's nice is it's really, really sweet, but then you get the sort of the taste of what I would consider a white wine coming through at the end.
Yeah.
So it tastes multi-dimensional.
It's very sweet. It does then turn into that kind of figgy raisin type taste that you would expect from something like port, like a fortified wine.
Which obviously different grapes, so red grapes versus white, but yes, all the same kind of
has that kind of that,
crystallized candied fruit, ginger, saffron.
But to me, that comes with a slight bitterness as well, right at the end.
And a still racing acidity. So what it is not is syrupy and sticky and flabby. It is delicious to drink because you have a lot of acid as well as a lot of sugar.
He definitely looked at me when he said the word flabby.
So it works best places like in Bordeaux because you have these damp, dewy, misty mornings, but then they clear and you get sunshine in the afternoon. If it's just constantly damp, then the wrong type of molds grow and you will just end up with rotten crop. This particular Botrytis needs that chance to take form and then to be drying out in the afternoon in the rich sun, and it doesn't all happen with the same speed and time of each grape on the vine, so somebody then has to manually go along and pick out the ones that are ready.
Like, as we were saying earlier, no one picked it off and went, let's try one. I reckon the dog tried some and they went, bloody hell, Oscar ate a whole bunch of mouldy grapes and isn't dead.
He actually looks like he really enjoyed them.
Yeah, he actually said, this is delicious with notes of fig.
What I think probably happened is that
I want to go with that
They
story.
gave one field to Barry. Barry did not look after that field. Those vines started to go mouldy, but Barry, being Barry, thought, I know what I'll do.
I won't tell anyone, I'll make wine with it anyway.
Yeah, and they went, this is delicious, what did you do? And he went, surprise, it's fake. It's not really wine. It's mouldy wine.
The challenge with Noble Rot or Botrytis is that it also, as you might expect, because of the evaporation of all the water, heavily reduces yield. So therefore it becomes not just very labour intensive and careful, but also very expensive because there's less of it. So Sauternes and sweet wines tend to be in half bottles and still drive a good price because they're so difficult to produce. But that lusciousness and depth in complexity of flavour also means with the high sugar and high acid, it can preserve and last a long time. One more family of mould. Would you like to see it?
I think this is the one I was expecting, but maybe it's not. Because we've been on a journey.
No idea.
The mouldiest journey ever.
Boys, you ready for some Thamnidium?
Are you ready?
Yeah. No!
That is what I was hoping for.
I didn't even, yeah.
This is mouldy then, okay.
Dry aged steak.
Dry aged beef and the conversation about friendly moulds doing good things and the importance of careful control to avoid the bad.
Is this Galician?
It is Galician.
Blonde.
Correct.
Oh, what do any of those things mean?
Galician blonde is the type of cow. This is sirloin, dry aged. And shout out to the butcher from Essex, Thomas Joseph, because he's been looking after this for an awful long time. So when you go to a supermarket or a butcher, you might see 28-day aged, 30, 40, 60. This was 75 days at the point he shipped it to us, and we've had it for over a week. So probably already close to 85 days.
Where's the mould? Obviously it's on the outside. Are these just hung and then you wait for the mould to attach itself?
Basically. So many years ago, I was asked to prepare a venison fillet that had been shot and butchered and hung by the gamekeeper of an estate. And it was 60, 70 days old and hanging literally in a workshop, warehouse, barn. It wasn't great. And it literally had a fur coat on it. I was gagging as I was preparing it. The outside was not great. But once that was all trimmed up, what was inside was phenomenal, sensational. But actually, that fur coat is a sign of bad aging. It shouldn't create a fur coat. If the place where you have it is cool, relatively dry, good air circulation, the molds will do their job, but they shouldn't take over and create a fur coat. So really interesting that, and there are little tiny bits you can see on that, but it has been so carefully looked after. And I'll be honest, our fridge is not the same kind of circulation as theirs at the butchery. So some of those molds have literally amplified in the last week since we've had it.
I'm so excited. What are we doing with it, Evers?
No, you've seen it now. The nature of dry aging means that the weight obviously reduces as the moisture evaporates off. You will get a very tough mold-induced edge, which isn't really much good. Some people say you can churn it into burger mixes and stuff. The jury's out on that. It actually just becomes part of the wastage and therefore has to be costed into the good stuff, which is why it's so expensive. So we're going to trim off maybe a centimetre off of the edge, take off just one steak before you get to the bone, that's still got a bone in it, and we'll cook off a delicious steak.
Good luck.
Oh, thanks.
Sir.
I'm going to start off by cutting off the steak from here and then we'll trim off the edge. I've done a really good steak.
You've done a really good set. That is a...
And we will need to discard the edge that has dry aged and where those molds have begun to do their work.
Can we do a smell check? Oh my,
Thamnidium,
it smells mouldy.
dusty, musty, but incredibly beefy.
Yes, so beefy it errs on the similar sort of smells as some of that blue cheese.
For sure, and the way obviously you've been cutting it, every time you put your finger into it, it doesn't bounce back.
No.
It just disintegrates because it is so well broken down over time. Heavily season up and get into our pan. Whilst we let the beef rest, this is all about dispelling the myths of mouldy food, right? Mouldy food can be delicious, but we have to address some molds are less good for you.
Bread mould.
Mold on bread, or molds that maybe you find in your fruit bowl on a, an orange or something like that, or the molds that perhaps you find on the top of jam after it's been open for too long. Those are less good, and because of the way molds grow, they grow down into it. It's quite difficult just to scrape it off and carry on. You can scrape a little bit down and get rid of a chunk, and underneath might be fine.
I think the golden rule is any mould that you've grown yourself by accident is not good mould. Any mould that's been grown by an expert producing food,
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, and you're likely to pay extra for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's about time we're cutting to the steak. Go on then, Jay, do us the honours.
Just eat it.
Yeah, norm. As we spoke before, looking after food products as they age and preserve so that the molds are controlled is so important. That's why you do often pay a premium for it. That piece of beef that we bought, bone in, was £150 worth of beef.
That is rare.
Now, there are going to be some people saying that that's too rare, but we will see.
I know what good steak tastes like. I don't know what 80-something plus days aged
Cheers.
mouldy steak tastes like. Okay, yeah, it tastes like great steak.
Shh, I'm going to need a minute.
Due to the nature of the cow's life, a tougher, firmer, more of a chew, but the aging helps to break a lot of that down. And then, in theory, and you guys tell me, you get that buttery, earthy, rich, umami beefiness through and through. And the fat, which, having handled the steak I've touched, is all over my hands, and that sort of tallow is just delicious.
So the texture's definitely more tender.
You get a really clean bite through. And from a texture perspective, you bite into it. And
You're not chewing it apart.
No.
Yeah.
But with every chew, you're getting more and more flavour released.
It just melts.
Yeah.
Like it melts away, it's not chewy.
The fat is one of my favourite parts about ex-dairy cow steaks because it's so flavoursome. And whereas most people a lot of people cut off the fat and won't want to eat it, you have to try that.
Penicillium, Aspergillus, Botrytis, or Thamnidium.
What's
Do you
your
have a
favourite mould?
mould?
I knew he was going to ask that. I like Aspergillus.
My two favourites would be the penicillium because cheese and cured meats I think is spectacular and it gets used in so many different ways to create so many different cheeses and meats. But how can you ignore, I can't remember what you called this one.
Thamnidium.
How can you ignore that? That is unbelievable.
It's even pronounced Catalonian.
Yes, yeah. Begins with an S, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Comment down below, do you have a favourite mould? More importantly, are there other foods out there from across the world that rely on mould in a really positive way? Because I think mouldy food gets a bad rap. Where would we be without it?
That video had everything. It had a little bit of gagging, it had a lot of science, a lot of usefulness, and delicious steak.
And an ounce of Latin, half of which was pronounced correctly.
Sorted food. For 15 years of crimes of silliness against food, you will be sent to a culinary rehabilitation and penal facility. Here you will be placed on a food redemption program based on your long list of past misdemeanors. This facility is not for the weak-stomached. There will be many challenges ahead in order to restore your reputations. But I trust if you take the program completely seriously, you will leave the facility a far more sensible and well-adjusted food channel. Needless to say, escape is not only improbable, it's impossible.
And I have been tasked with overseeing a torture seconds.
Jailer Swift.
What can I do to help?
Tinfoil, anybody?
That looks amazing!
Nothing is correct here, so it's not 3. What the hell are you doing?
This is 15 minutes.
Yes, good.
Evans!